Hello, my fellow booktube wonders of the world. In most of my videos, you've noticed that they've been running about 20 minutes long. Man, I guess I have a lot to say. Perhaps that happens when you're a mom with 4 children who listens more than speaks. So when you finally get in front of an audience, you just kind of let loose. I had high hopes. The title is Three to See the King by Magnus Mills. I thought it was going to be a book of wisdom, a book to begin the traditional 12 days of Christmas, a parable, a fable, something to read into where at the end the author would give us a clue as to if our thoughts were correct or wrong. Just what was he trying to teach us through his book? I give the cover of this book 5 out of 5 stars. The cover is brilliant and beautiful. And there is the star in the sky, and there is a shimmer and a shine, and a tin house that is beautiful and divine, standing out in the middle of an open field, in the middle of nowhere. A place to be content, a place to be alone, a place to simply be still and know, a place to just be. And because of the title of the book and the outward appearance, I judged this book by its cover. I thought it's going to be brilliant. And of course, it made me think of "We 3 kings of Orient are, bearing gifts we traverse afar. Field and fountain, moor and mountain, following yonder star." 3 to See the King didn't even involve 3 main characters. No, there was 5, and then 6, and then just a crowd of people. I couldn't even begin to understand 3 to See the King. Where did the title even fit in? Unfortunately, the book did not live up to its cover. Where the book design of the jacket gets 5 stars from me, the inside, all of the words, the fable itself only receives a 2-star. I found it laborious to read. I almost did not finish it. However, it still gets 2 stars because my 1-star rating is reserved for books that I do not finish, reserved for books that would be unhealthy to ingest. I was encouraged when I saw 3 to See the King by Magnus Mills. Again, the cover was so striking, and it made me think of Jesus and his birth and those that traveled from afar to come and meet the King. And yet, it had absolutely nothing to do with the Bible at all. I was very misled by the cover. So, 3 to See the King is the tale of a man who lives in a house made of tin, set in a remote corner of the world where the wind howls and the sand blows. It is a bleak landscape, but the man assures us he is content enough. His cozy tin home shields him from the elements, requires minimal upkeep, and best of all, is located miles from his nearest neighbor. When one day a woman arrives and moves in, his life changes abruptly and irrevocably. Neighbors come calling, first one, then another, then a third. Disruption turns to disturbance, disturbance to unrest, unrest to migration. Soon, tin-dwelling people everywhere are dismantling their houses and heading off to seek a mysterious Messiah figure, a master builder who will reveal to them a new way to live. Drawn by forces he cannot understand, much less resist, our hero joins the pilgrimage. So interestingly enough, I did not see the main character as the hero of this book at all, and it only becomes clear that he actually is the king at the end of the book. So he lives in a tin house where the prairie winds blow, and this made me think of Casper, Wyoming, because in certain areas of Wyoming, the wind blows so hard that it's hard to stand up straight against it. And I had short hair when I lived there because your hair do's would never stay put and your hair would just whip you in the face. And so, what's the point of even having hair when you live in a place where all you can do is put it up and never wear it down for fear of it tangling all around and for you not being able to see? This man that we meet in the beginning pages of the book lives in a house made of tin. He is alone by choice. He is happy to be out, away from any neighbors. He likes the quiet and the solitude, the sanctuary of it. And then eventually a woman pops up, comes by, and invites herself in. It's never revealed as to where exactly she came from. They obviously had known each other once upon a time, but again, the backstory is never revealed. We just all of a sudden have the abrupt entrance of a character that never goes away again. She just remains and stays. And it's as if they end up in a relationship, not married, and yet bound to be together forever. Eventually, because news spreads fast, people take notice that there's a new woman about. And so the closest neighbors, 3 men who live in separate tin homes spread a few miles apart from each other, end up making the trek to see our main character at his house. Mainly to see the new woman in town. And eventually this way of life, this just every day being the same old, same old, same old, same old. Some of the people get restless because they feel the need to add things to their homes. They feel the need to just stand out a little bit, to add a little flair to their dwellings. Whereas our main character could simply do without much of the hullabaloo. He's content. And therein lies the key: contentment. Whereas the other 3 become discontent and hear of a man named Michael that is further out to the west, further out than anyone has ever been before. Well, this Michael's existence, doing life a little bit differently, having gone further than the average man, draws the attention of the other 3 neighbors, and eventually they dismantle their homes and carry them abroad to where this Michael is. Now, Michael is the aforementioned Messiah that people flock to go see. And Michael, for whatever reason, people have found a leader. He seems even-keeled, even-tempered, able to control the crowd, able to get them to do his bidding because he's setting about doing things differently. He's having them all set up a tin city where then they all begin to dig a canyon together because inside of the canyon they'll be able to get out of the weather. The wind will not follow them into the depths of the canyon that they dig. And then Michael has orchestrated it where everybody has a job to do and they move in teams. So every 3 days, the people rotate. The people have a rhythm to life. And yet again, discontentment stirs them up. They feel as though, wow, this has gone on for long enough. The canyon is deep enough, is it not? When are we going to start rebuilding the tin city within the walls of the canyon? Everyone is eager to get started and to start their new lives out of the wind, to live differently and yet together. But it's the different, it's the draw of the new. But Michael doesn't share his full plan with everyone. Michael seems to be a good leader because he has control of the crowd. He's this beacon of new, this beacon of hope, this beacon of change, a way of doing life differently. And yet he fails to share with them everything that he has planned. And this failure ends up turning all of Michael's grand schemes in upon themselves. He led through an air of mystery, getting the people to do his will with encouragement and promises of things to come, and yet keeping things very mysterious, where nobody really knew what the next step would be. All he alluded to was that it was going to be a big step when they were done digging. Well, one day the unrest reaches a fevered pitch, and Michael steps in to say, okay, we are not going to be moving our tin down within this canyon to live in tin houses at the bottom of this canyon that we've dug. No, we're going to make our houses of clay. Now everyone is up in arms because they have all the material with the tin. They don't want to learn something new. They just want to begin with what they know, and they've all come to accept and understand that their houses of tin will be wonderful outside of the wind. And now they have to learn how to build with clay, and so people abandon ship. They want no part of this. There is a full-on coming against the person they once revered. Now, our main character, who had lived in this initial tin dwelling that we found at the beginning of the book, he does sojourn eventually after his friends, not so much necessarily to move, but to observe. He wants to find out, why did they move? Who is this Michael? What is going on? And the interesting thing is, our main character never fully falls in love or bows at the feet of this Michael. He's able to keep his own head. He doesn't necessarily follow like a sheep with a shepherd. He has his wits about him. And while he does go along and does help excavate and does live among the people for a time, he never sets up a new tin house. He never fully is on board. He's a little bit skeptical. As I said, he keeps his wits about him. He's able to retain his own thoughts, his own mind, and be observant and able to stand back while also finding merits in the work and able to enjoy the excitement and the differences about him. While embracing the new, he also loves the old, and he's still not ready to move on. And the people understand that, oh, here we have in our main character one of the original tin dwellers. He knows his stuff. People looked up to him because they knew he knew how to build. They knew he knew how to shovel the dirt. They knew he knew how to do certain things that they did not, with expertise born from experience. And so our main character does become a hero in the sense of he's looked up to as Michael's second in command, because he does have his own thoughts, he is articulate, and he does have experience and knowledge, much like Michael. And in the end, when the mob turns against Michael, when people begin to fall out from under his spell and under the newness and the hope of what's to come, when people start to understand, well, we had one thing in our mind, now you're changing it all up, and we don't want to follow you into the canyon to live in mud huts. We want to continue to live in our tin homes, and you're saying our tin can't go into the canyon? What kind of leader are you? What was all this work for? Why were you having us do all this? Was it just for selfish reasons then? Or did you want us all to live in community? Where is this utopia? And now people are just frantic and fraught and destroyed because of the changes that they no longer want to embrace. Now the change is just too much. Now they're adrift at sea, no longer having a leader. But then it dawns on the people that there's one man among them, the hero of the story, that has never fully wavered, never fully gotten on board, always been a little bit skeptical. And so it's to our hero, the king, that they turn to. And 3 people approach him and ask his advice. And he says, okay, but if I tell you, 1, you're not going to like it, and 2, you must obey. And they said, okay. And he told them to toss the tin of their previous homes over the canyon walls, to leave it all behind, and to go back from where they had come from, to return to their lives they had left before. And that, my friends, is the end of the story. It begins how it ends. We find our main character back at his tin home, away from any neighbors, a life of solitude, and yet a life that he loves, where there is quiet and possibility, and yet always every day much of the same. So we can come to some conclusions on our own after reading a book like this. We can say that contentment is key. We can see that following the crowd is not always the place where you want to find yourself or the place to be. We can say that swimming against the current is far better and smarter and wiser. If you want people to follow you forever, then you need to not waver. You need to be steady and you need to be honest. It's good to be neighborly, and yet it's also good to have quiet. Solitude is where you can be still and know. So there's a whole bunch we can read into in reading this book. And yet, because there's no author's note, you'll never know if you are reading into it correctly or not. And so here's my warning. For me, this book was a fail. It was a miss. I'd say don't buy it. It's not worth your precious time, since our time is all very limited. I'd hate for this to be the last book any of us read. But if you're willing to dedicate some time to it, willing to dive within the page for double meanings or a depth of meaning that isn't there on the surface, then perhaps this book is for you to puzzle out what is the takeaway the author meant for you to have. And if you've read this book by chance, please do comment below to let me know my deciphering of it. Is it close to what you took away from it too, or not? Here's hoping the next book I pick up is able to match its cover or surpass it. And then we can go back to another 5-star read instead of a 2, because 2s are just tough. All right, friends, as you count down the 12 days of Christmas to the Epiphany, may your path be one of peace and love and joy. And may we find books that help us along life's way. Until next time, friends.